Hello everybody, thanks for joining us again for a little bit of rewind, recall, and we're looking forward to this one. This is show number 5, USA, television number 5. The air date was April 9th, 1988, and this one we're going to be looking at, this one was made out of a copy of the one from Hazard, Kentucky, back in 1988, and it was like the third leg of the bicycle.
We might explain that again for somebody that hasn't watched us before. Back at this period of wrestling, you had one spit it out, Les, one master tape, and that tape was showing, say, in Knoxville on Saturday afternoon. Then that tape would be sent to Kingsport, Johnson City, which would air. And if the interviews were different for Kingsport and Johnson City, those could be put in at the main station in Knoxville. But once that tape left Kingsport, Johnson City, it went to the Hazard, Harlan area. Mm-hmm. And now that there was a box of additional roll of tapes with interviews that were sent ahead that had to be rolled in when it was showing in Hazard. So when we say this show was dubbed off in the Hazard, you're going to see the Hazard interviews live, and that's the reason for it.
That's why you don't see Knoxville. I mean, Knoxville had a totally different card. Each one of these markets usually had a different card, a little bit different card.
And we might mention, too, that at that point, the FCC, you were allowed, it was 16 minutes of promo, of interview, commercial time.
Commercial time, total time.
So if I'm sitting in the middle of the program and say, Friday night in Knoxville, I've just turned that into a commercial. So we've ruined things. So we have to, you'll see some of them talking about a particular type of match, but not mentioning a city, which would say if Ron and I are having a chain match in Knoxville, may having that chain match in Johnson City, maybe having it in Hazard, but we can't mention the town. But we can talk about being in a chain match. I've been in a chain match. He's the king of, that sort of thing in general. And hope like hell that the people catch on to what we're plugging.
So in this one, we've been opening with the dark studio and the lit up USA set behind Gordon and I. This one, for the first time, we open in the Coliseum go directly to a match. It's for the USA Championship belt, and it's a Mongolian Stomper against the Bullet. And so it's a totally different opening, I think I explained the reason the crowd, you're going to notice that the crowd is small. Coliseum's a big building, for one thing, and, the crowd is very small, but you got to understand that this is only the second event
in the Coliseum.
Yeah. So, we're building the territory here. And you got to start with good TVs and usually at least 8, 10, sometimes 12 weeks of TV before you even run your first match. But in this particular territory, we were running our first match with our second and third TV.
Right.
So, you really don't expect to have big crowds. And what you're going to see as these programs progress is those Coliseum videos are going to be with a lot bigger crowds.
And we might mention too that in Knoxville, wrestling holds the attendance record at the amphitheater in Chilhowie Park. It also holds the attendance record at the Civic Coliseum downtown. Do we hold any other records?
We hold those two for sure, and they are still the records.
Yeah,
they have never been broken. One of those, I wrestled Harley Race for the world title in 1977, April of 1977, and the second one,
the amphitheater was Whitey and I against the Wrights.
So there's a lot of history in Knoxville wrestling, yes. But in this particular video that starts this program out, it's a rather small crowd, and then we go to the first match.
Well, let's talk about the opening, that cold opening.
Okay.
You're going to see it's not running the logo. It's boom, go right to this match. This is basically to set the stage for the entire hour because there are going to be promos about what you see in this first tape. The guys that were involved will be on interviews. Some of them will be in matches. So that tape just kind of gets the viewer prepared for what we're going to talk, or what the commentators and the wrestlers are going to talk about throughout the next hour, and what's going to be pushed hard.
Sets the stage for everything. Bullet is in that, and he is one of the live matches in the show, the fourth match of the show. So the first match of the show was John Kazana, and a little bit of history of John Kazana is when I bought Knoxville in 1974, I bought it from John Kazana. And John Kazana is Joe Kazana's grandfather.
Right.
So, Joe is very green in this. And it doesn't make any difference because it doesn't last very long.
And when I saw it first, I thought, who is that? And then when it said, that's not Joe Kazana, I saw a few weeks ago or a few months ago, right?
Yeah, he's changed quite a bit.
Yeah, he has.
Like all of us have, I guess. So
we might mention that Joe's son is wrestling now, AJ.
Yeah.
Trained with Tommy Pritchard, and AJ is now wrestling.
Yeah, so, the Kazanas go back a long, long time in Southeastern history. Before John was his brother, George.
Right.
And George had tremendous connections, brought in some of the greatest wrestlers of all time in Knoxville.
Yeah.
Having seen one of Scott Teal's books, I recognized and realized, wow, George Kazana had a lot of pull.
Yeah.
He was getting some great wrestlers into Knoxville way back in the 30s and 40s.
When they talk about promoters too, that promoting was so much different. I mean, when you say WWE, Vince McMahon, Vince doesn't go to the newspapers instead. John Kazana, because this is when I was wrestling for John. At the matches were over on Friday night, John went downtown to the News Sentinel, where he had worked at one time. And he had run of the place. He went in the sports department. He wrote his own newspaper column for the results and what the next week was going to be, turned it into somebody, and it got printed. And, he did, and it was posters. We had no TV back then.
It was important. And I wish to hell I'd still had him there, man. I wish he was doing that for me once I bought it, because those guys, they couldn't even get the spelling of the wrestlers' names right in the paper.
But the one thing we picked up, though, in Southeastern was WIVK 107.7, the big country station in this part of the world, basically, right? Bobby, I can't remember Bobby's last name, was the general manager. And he always said, country music, stock car racing, and wrestling. He said those go together. But for a long period of time, I would get back to my apartment after a show on Friday night, and I would call WIVK, and the news guy, if it was on that late at night, would record the results from that Friday night, and I could plug the next Friday night or whatever we were doing the next week. And those were run on IVK's hourly news reports from the time I put that in there, which would have been about 11 o'clock on Friday night, right through midday on Saturday. So we were high profile in the city.
Yeah.
I mean, if you didn't know we were there, it was because you weren't paying attention.
Yeah. And occasionally we got to go and make interviews. You could go and be on there. You had a big event, they would put you on the air, and it was a nice little relationship we had with them. And so Joe Kazana's in this first match, and he's against Buddy Landell, and it's a pretty quick finish. I mean, Landell ends up loading his glove before the match even begins, and it's just a one-punch match, one-punch affair. And then the first video that comes on after that was Furnace. He watches his loss of the Tennessee Championship in the Coliseum.
To Landell. Right. And what they're going to see something else on there that I hated to see and should have never seen. And you didn't catch it, did you, at first?
I think I probably didn't
just discounted it, right? Buddy Landell is laying face down in the ring, and he does this. And if nobody knows what this is, that's called getting juice or getting blood. He was cutting himself, which is an art that should never be exposed to the wrestling fans. And when I saw this on this tape, I got stiff, because to me, when I did that and I got to the back, if the boys hadn't seen it, then I figured nobody saw it, because you try, to me, I was always out of the ring, under the ring, something. But when I saw that, I want to kick Buddy. He got heat with me, and it wasn't the right kind.
Yeah, I mean, so some guys were really good with that, and some guys were really horrible with it, and there was a few of them that that couldn't do it very well, and
shouldn't.
So, and you shouldn't have had them do it at all.
Right.
If that were the case. First interview, obviously these interviews coming, like we said, out of Hazard, Kentucky. So they're talking about Harlan and Hazard matches, and it was Ron Wright and Stomper and the dogs, and our dog was on there, and the RPMs, and you notice they had all the hardware, all the belts,
right.
and there's a good reason for that. When you build a territory, if you want to get started quickly, you put your heat on the heels. That's the first thing that has to happen to draw money, is you have to have hot heels. And when your heels are all your champions, then there is your heat. And they don't give them up. You don't beat them right away. You let them keep those belts until you start selling out. You go from nothing, which we did when I went to Pensacola after I bought into Pensacola. Yeah. And you were still in Knoxville, and we were running 2 territories. We went down there, cranked the heat on the heels. Right. We were giving money back because there wasn't anybody in those houses down there. Towns were totally dead, and within 6 months, we were selling out. And it was a pretty amazing growth, and it was all because heat was on the heels. Belts were on the heels.
It's like when the babyface gets over with the fans in a particular area, it's like he's their hometown team as such, right? Like at University of Tennessee in Knoxville, right? So that babyface, if he doesn't have that title, then these fans are going to get behind him. And if the story is laid out right, we were talking last week about something to anticipate, a reason to keep coming. And I thought my favorite babyface just had that guy beat, but some way or another that heel stole it back, damn it. He gets another shot at it. But that's the way you built the stories.
So second match was Ron Sexton against Cousin Junior. Ron Sexton.
This was actually a decent preliminary match anywhere. Anywhere. And it was the best match on this particular program, because Sexton made the match. Right. Because Junior's obviously the star. He makes the parade around the ring, and he dances with some people, and he does his thing. But once he gets up on that apron, Sexton don't just hit him, knock him off one time. He brings him over into the ring, and basically he becomes a star. Ron was aggressive, which you'll find most of the enhancement guys aren't. But Ron had started with us as a referee back in the mid '70s with Southeastern, and then progressed and turned into Rick Connors training. Yeah. And turned into a real decent hand and worked. Was a steady preliminary wrestler for us.
Worked for Southeastern. He worked for the Paphos up in Kentucky. He worked in the Kansas City territory. Right. He ends up working around the country in several different territories. Yeah. And Cousin Junior is a gentleman named Keene, Larry Keene.
Lanny, wasn't it Lanny?
I think it's Larry Keene.
Is it? Okay, I thought it was Lanny Keene.
And then he was trained by a guy named Dale Mann out of Kentucky. And he goes on to become partners with the dog, and Larry Latham.
Well, he went to WWE as Cousin Elmer's partner and Hillbilly Jim. Yeah. They were like a faction for a while.
So he had a big future. I mean, he's basically beginning at this point too, and he goes on to work a lot of different places. And as we said, we both agreed it was probably the best match on the card.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And then because of Ron Sexton actually. So the second interview was Dundee and Cousin Junior, and they talked about the Stampedes, which was still the things. Is that the type of it was a type of battle royal. You drew a number out of the hat for 1 and 2, and then everybody came to the ring. They pulled out the number. They went back.
Whatever number, if you got number 17, then you were the 17th.
17th man in the ring. Every minute, new number. New man came to the ring. and you could either win by throwing them over the top or by pinfall.
And,
So-
and the RPM on the profile, the RPMs take the time to explain.
They really get into the explanation
Yeah,
of it. So
yeah.
you get a little tease of it there in that interview with Dundee and Cousin Jr. And then the RPMs really get to go into depth.
And this
about
is
what
kind of
the
an
match is
offshoot
about.
of the Royal Rumble. That
Yeah, WWE kind of got
yeah.
into.
Yeah.
They might have copied us for that, matter, you know.
You know what? If somebody didn't copy somebody in the wrestling business, it wouldn't be the wrestling business.
So the third match on there was Alan Reynolds, who was a extremely green kid. He was trained by Bill Dundee. Dundee was bringing guys every time we did TV. He would bring guys over. To work
He was
with
so green, Ronald, that I wanted to reach in and go, here, go there, stand here, do this, get up, you know.
I mean, you know,
He was lost. Yeah.
He was very, very lost. He would have probably been better in the first match, where he got knocked out.
Just got hit with a glove and, and moved on.
We could have put Joe would have been better.
Yeah.
In that third match. So Alan Reynolds, and then he was against the dog, and then you know what was really the high spot in that whole match, I thought, was Ron Wright. Ron Wright and the Stomper out there on the floor. I mean, it was just ridiculous. I mean, Dog would trash him out, and then Dog would draw the referee,
Yeah.
and they would work on him out there on the outside. That turned out to be their gimmick for the entire USA. And then, Ron Wright had a chance to talk about it later in the show, and I think Gordon actually asked him about it, they were quite a pair. If it was the Stomper in the ring, then it was Ron Wright and the Dog out there.
Right.
And if it was Dog in the ring, it was Stomper and Wright out there. But Ron Wright was great. He had the old tuxedo. He had the cane. He was using everything he could.
Yeah, I was thinking he's on death's door to hear him tell it, right?
Yes.
And this was 1988. He was still on death's door in 1992 when he was doing his thing.
There you go. Yeah, he was on death's door for 30 years. So and then the second video of the day, Gordy from Nagasaki, Japan. Having worked there, I'm very familiar with that town, and it was typical Japan. I mean, people in America, when they watch that, they're like, what in the heck is that all about? I mean, they cannot imagine that. But I worked partners there in 1983 with Barry Windham. And in our first night, we were in it was the bullet train city that we went to. And anyway, we were in the last match, television match, with Bruiser Brody and Stan Hansen.
Strictly wrestling, man.
Obviously. And in that match, we went to the ring first, obviously. And they came out of the dressing room. And half the crowd rushed back there to the dressing room, and we're right on top of them. And Stan had a rope, and Brody had a chain. And Brody's chain was probably 15 feet long. And he would get that chain going around his head like this, and then he'd drop it down, and they would take people's feet out from under him. There'd be bodies would be flying off, and the back of their heads hitting the floor. And Barry had never been there either. We're watching them, and we're going, my God, what are they going to do? And when they got to the ring, instead of coming up the aisleway, they went down to the middle of the section, and they went through the middle of the section, took the chairs just like Gordy did, and was throwing them at people, and everybody in the building scrambled. All the ringsiders, all four sections, all left. And they destroyed chairs for 10 minutes, and then they finally got into the ring.
And when you understand the Japanese, the society is so, thank you. I mean, they are so polite, and yet to see them lose that and start scrambling to get out of the way of these crazy Americans. Right?
Yeah. And I always thought they were kind of like, the old story about Indians, where the Indians like to sneak up on white people sometime and just touch them, right? It was like a coup. They called it a coup. Touch them and then run. They wouldn't always kill that person.
Yeah.
They just wanted to sneak up and show you what they could do. Well, the Japanese reminded me of that because they all wanted to just get close enough to touch one of them. If they did that, you could just see there was a celebration. A bunch of them would puddled
Sure.
up like, wow, you did it, right?
Yeah.
So,
Though the
yeah.
mask guys talking about back in the 60s when they first started going to their Jody Hamilton and Tom Renesso, the assassins, that they wore their mask when they were out walking the street, and they would look behind them and they had drawn a crowd.
Oh yeah, you drove the crowd
Follow them down
everywhere
the
you went.
Watch
Yeah.
it. And just so, but you're right. Yeah, it was a whole different world over there.
Oh yeah, and not only just on the street and everywhere you went, what you ate, everything you did, but definitely in the buildings, in the arenas.
Yeah.
So now Gordy, a great part of this show I thought was Gordy's appearance immediately following this video, and he's got himself a chair.
Yeah.
And he's got the same thing happening that you could see in the video. He just took that video and extended it,
Right.
and got himself over with, I got this chair and that's what I use, and in the next show he's going to be wrestling live on the next one. So it was his introduction to USA Wrestling basically. Third interview was Landell and Guerrero, which sure seems like becoming a little bit of a team type of deal. They like to do interviews together. And they talk about there again, same thing, the Stampedes.
And then you had a series of films there, the Wright and Stomper, Dog, and then showed the film from the opening once again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you had Wright comes on right after them, and they go back to that, that opening film and the whole interference, and then Gordon makes a point to asking Wright in there, why do you interfere?
Right.
Why is it that you can consistently interfere? And then Ron tells him, oh my God, no, I can't interfere, because I'm so sick. I might die.
Right.
He does the great Ron Wright stuff.
It's
always made
blatant
Ron
liar, and yet, and that's how he got his heat. Because
that's how he got his heat, and that's why he became such a star in that part of the country.
You're right.
And then the last match was the Shogun, who was Tim Fry, who the program before was one of the interns. This time he's got a Shogun outfit on. He does 5 or 6 different gimmicks, and not just in that company, but in other companies as well. And you couldn't tell him. You never pick out that this guy was last week's intern.
I had to ask you who the Shogun was.
So he does a real good job of that, and he's just. And he was in there with the Bullet, and obviously the Bullet did his dancing, and I think we need to bring up the fact that the audio. Now fans are going to notice that the audio sometimes it's louder cheering.
I know I had to turn my PC down with Cousin Junior. I go, wow!
There you go. and to explain this, they had music. And you're going to see it in the Bullet. The Bullet does a little bit of dancing, but he's dancing the bad to the bone. But nowadays you can't play that music back anymore. So that's a no-no.
Yeah.
So we've put some audio in there, but what was really impressive to me is that audio was very loud. But when they cut the audio, the crowd was just about making the same amount of noise in the studio itself. But that had been covered with the music.
Right.
So we do what we have to do in this day and time to make it work and be able to show the stuff on YouTube, and that's kind of what they require. Last interview was Bullet, Dundee, and Furnace, and great interview by all 3 of them. I think you mentioned something about Furnace. Low key.
Yes, he talked like a gentleman, and which we talked about on this segment before, right? You need some up and down, some valleys and peaks, and there for a while was everybody screwed top of their lungs. And Doug takes it down and makes it so you're going to understand virtually everything he said.
Great crowd response on that last interview. That indicates to a promoter and an owner that we're going in the right direction.
Right.
Your crowd is getting more involved, and once your TV crowd gets involved, your Coliseum crowd starts to get involved, and then it starts with TV and it goes to the buildings, and that's the way it's always been. And then next week we had a close, which is a nice little close, and we mentioned the fact that on number 6, that's going to be coming up next Sunday. It'll be on YouTube next Sunday. You're going to have Stomper in the next one. You're going to have Gordy in a live match. You're going to have Doug Furnace wrestling again, who hasn't been on since I think the first show. And it's going to be another great show. They're continuing to improve.
Yeah. And realize for the live crowd, the guys who they aren't familiar with, they're becoming familiar with. So they're picking out the people they like, the ones they don't like. So as they become more decided in who not to like, then you're going to see the crowds pick up and get louder because, then they're more into it as well.
I want to talk to people just a second here, Les, about that southeastern sweet spot, the cage match between Terry Gordy and Michael Hayes that was recorded in Alabama.
Right.
That's been on, and if people haven't seen that, I think that is a remarkable piece of video, and it ends with those two guys in the same dressing room. After it's over, Michael Hayes still bleeding in his dressing room, and Terry Gordy comes in there, and they start to piece their relationship back together. They have been in this feud the entire time they came to South.
Because Gordy, when they saw they was going to cut Michael's hair, he decided that, that's a step too far.
Yeah. And and he did what a friend would do. He went back and saved Michael's hair. And to Michael Hayes, that hair was pretty much everything.
I think it still is today.
Yeah, and it's still there today, you know. So Terry saved his hair, and then they kind of make up, and then they leave Southeastern the following week, and we send that video that we had recorded that match in Alabama, and it goes into Georgia, and they become back friends again. They team back up again, and it was just a great relationship we had with the Georgia territory, and we had the same type of relationship.
And the story flowed from one territory.
It went from one territory, but that's pretty unusual. You didn't see that very
No.
often, that one territory is going to send you that final tape and let you build for your benefit.
And so we've pretty much covered this show, but we want to remind you folks of several things. October the 13th, Ron and I, along with Bunkhouse Buck, Jimmy Golden, will be at Calhoun's on the River in Knoxville for Dinner with a Stud. It's going to be a 2-hour deal from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Ron's going to do his normal studcast in that first hour, and then the floor will be open for a Q&A session with all the three of us involved in the second hour. There will be door prizes. Some of those door prizes will be wrestling collectibles in a cash bar. $30 for this whole thing. You're going to get an autographed picture of Ron, both Ron and I. That comes with the deal. Your meal, and Calhoun's on the River is noted for their barbecue. It'd be a barbecue buffet, baked beans, coleslaw, all the sauces from hot to mild, rolls, iced tea, lemonade, and a cash bar. So all for $30. You can go to tnstud.com, click on the stud store, and you can make your reservation there. Like I say, $30, and you're going to get that back in pictures
alone.
And your meal.
Yeah. 2 pictures alone is be $30 on the website.
Right.
So
and that's a
and your meal doesn't cost you anything.
Right.
Then,
and the reservations have to be made by the 11th.
Make your reservation by the 11th.
October
and
the
then
11th.
Once you buy your ticket, you show up on the 13th, then they will escort you into the banquet facility, and that's where we'll be.
Right.
And
we're gonna have a lot of fun. We're gonna talk. You guys ask any questions you want. We're hoping to do this the second Wednesday of each month through November, skipping December because of the holidays.
Actually, we are now we have the night before Thanksgiving, the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving on November 24th will be the second one. So fans will have opportunity to come and not have to go to work the next day, and may get some people that come from outside. We've got fans coming from Louisiana, as far away as Louisiana already.
Yeah.
So the people are coming from.
And our dear friend Charlie Platt, if he can find his way out of Lower Alabama, will actually show up as well. Yeah, it would be great to have Charlie there as well. I want to remind you about something else that's on the Southeastern Rewind channel on YouTube. Is the hour-long interview it's not a promo, that I did with Dory Funk Jr. and Terry Funk. So 1994 was the day after the Night of Legends show, Smoky Mountain event in Knoxville. And what I like about it, we're not plugging a town, we're not plugging a match. It's Terry and Dory as Terry and Dory. Nothing's exaggerated. You'll see the real Funk Brothers, and it's unedited. It's for an hour, and we talk about their childhood, breaking in with their dad, cover the wrestling business.
Tremendous. It's a tremendous piece of audio, and wow, you really get a feel for the true Funks.
And we're gonna, at the end of this thing, I had asked, what do you see in the future? And I think you'll be surprised at some of the things that they were,
pretty good prognosticator.
Yes, exactly. I always said Terry was a soothsayer to begin with. But yeah, that is up on the channel right now, and will stay up there. Check it out if you haven't had the opportunity.
Thank everyone for joining us again today. And, and we look forward to the next one. We're going to be doing, obviously, USA TV number 6.